Cosmic Awakening, 1991. Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. By Makāula Nakae. 01. Prologue, The Journey of Return to the Soul. This is a mysterious town. This is a mysterious town. This is a mysterious, magical land. We arrived in this land as if guided here. Wandering through lands unknown. People known to none. Become one in this mysterious place. We remember that once, long ago, we were a single family. The stars live and shine, welcoming us home. The mountains heal our souls with a mysterious power. Tears overflow and will not stop. Listening with timid ears. And reaching out a hand to the eye of truth beginning to open. It calls out, "Awaken thou." I hear the voice of my inner soul. January 1991 brought snow that accumulated amid distant rumbles of thunder. This journey began when a friend showed me a flyer for a tour of Peru. The details printed on that small, wrinkled pamphlet read as follows. This journey focuses on healing. We will heal not only the physical shell you call the body, but also your inner emotional body. Most importantly, it is about recognizing the healing energy that exists within you, energy that can be utilized in your daily lives. When the people who migrated from Atlantis scattered across a changing earth, those from Lemuria, or Mu, had already settled in the land, now called Peru. At that time, this region was known as Oz, and the present South American continent had not yet risen, existing instead as a collection of islands. The Atlanteans who arrived here married and assimilated with the inhabitants of Oz, transmitting the wisdom of Atlantean civilization. This is the origin of what you now call the Inca people. Today, many people on Earth inherit the soul of this Oz era. Deep within themselves, many of these individuals harbor a desire to visit this land. In that place, they may well remember the wondrous magic of the Oz era. This land calls to souls that are prepared. And the voice experienced here is nothing less than a call to your very self. Excerpted from Jazua's Channeling in America. To be honest, at the time, I wasn't entirely free of doubt regarding this far-out content. Yet, influenced by several strange experiences in 1990, and by reading Academy Award-winning actress Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb and its companion works, I had harbored a desire to visit Peru someday. Nor can I say I lacked an interest in the emerging phenomenon of channeling, communicating with unseen, formless beings, or in the legendary, possibly prehistoric civilization of Atlantis. Looking back now, stripped of channeling phenomena and Atlantean magic talk, the simple desire to visit the ruins of the ancient Incan civilization and the cloud city of Machu Picchu was far stronger. Given that mindset, the moment I finished reading the tour reviews from the previous year, the decision to join this tour was made deep within my heart. Before long, my head was entirely filled with thoughts of Peru semicolon. Yet, on the flip side, I doubted that matters in everyday reality would arrange themselves so easily. Starting with how to raise the travel funds, which were an enormous sum for me at the time, a whole wave of anxieties regarding work and health suddenly surfaced and crashed over me, as if testing my firm resolve to go to Peru. Amidst all this, I began learning to view things positively, rethink thoroughly, solidify my convictions, and reaffirm my decisiveness before moving forward. Things simply do not move forward if you only sit around thinking in your head. Unless you keep taking action, your circumstances will merely continue along the established tracks of habit and automatic routine. The moment you begin challenging yourself with new things, however, the momentum of events gradually starts to shift. As a first step, I decided to visit the bank next to my office to ask about securing a loan to cover the travel costs, which I had initially assumed was utterly impossible. It was a first in my life. Thinking, well, what do I have to lose? I won't know unless I go ask. I took a deep breath and went for it. As a result, while I would have to repay the loan, the travel expenses were covered with astonishing ease. At the time, it was cheaper than buying a car, and countless people took out business loans. I was simply too young back then, and my grasp of such general societal norms was weak. I used to assume things were impossible right out of the gate, but I figured asking was free, so I took action and went. Lo and behold, the travel funds were secured. Through that process, I gradually became engrossed in a very conscious exercise of confronting minor feelings of terror and anxiety in order to construct the reality I desire. To put it simply, as various events occurred day by day, I would search for multiple positive reasons behind every single happening and apply the best possible one. I found myself confronting my own inner landscape, recognizing negative concepts and thought frameworks, and consciously rewriting and relearning them. I kept noticing my habitual tendencies to think negatively, my automatic ways of thinking, my reflexive reactions, and my automatic personal habits, and I continued working to change them. Instead of staying stuck in my current state, I constantly read or listened to new ways of thinking, learned them, remembered them, recalled what I had learned, and memorized it all over again. I practiced the discipline of continually reframing the phenomena confronting me with positive meanings. There were frequent times when it was difficult to view a given situation in a positive light, or when I lacked the emotional bandwidth to find an alternative idea, perspective, or mindset. In those moments, I simply repeated to myself, I don't understand it right now, but this event certainly has a positive meaning. Through this internal dialogue, I gradually realized how fundamentally my thought patterns revolved around a lack of certainty, and how I constantly aligned my awareness with fear and anxiety, endlessly predicting or imagining worst-case scenarios. Things didn't run smoothly right from the start, but I gradually became capable of noticing these patterns, and once I noticed them, I found myself catching them with increasing frequency. My thoughts, words, and actions arose almost automatically from within myself. Nothing can emerge from inside you that isn't already there. Only what exists inside comes out and expresses itself. Noticing the negativity within myself, viewing it objectively, and continuing to reframe it as positively as possible, the task of teaching my mind new things, especially new ways of thinking, required immense perseverance. Just how deeply embedded and normalized were those unconsciously imprinted concepts of uncertainty? Recognizing how deeply, broadly, and thoroughly these things I had accidentally memorized spanned across every corner of my subconscious, like a vast network of cloud poems, and rewriting them one by one in minute detail was a monumental task that demanded steadfastness and patience. Grounded in negative thinking, it is difficult to perceive things negatively, think negatively, and realize that negativity. How did such an equation of perception and thought cycle ever form? I certainly hadn't consciously chosen to fashion a negative perception and negative mindset for myself. I had just found myself that way before I knew it. Since that was my current state, if I didn't like it, I couldn't just bask in it. I had to remake it and reconstruct it. As a starting point, I bought a book called Positive Declarations and began not just reading it, but memorizing it. I studied models of thought, memorized them, and continually recalled what I had memorized. Once a day, I would intuitively open that book, take the positive perspectives and mindsets written within it into my mind, and quietly carry on with my life while keeping company with those ideas. I maintained a state of constantly thinking about them in my head. In a sense, it is no exaggeration to say I kept repeating them in my mind like a mantra. By repeatedly and continuously recalling them, I kept at it until that new information and those new ways of thinking became second nature. Noticing unconscious habits of thought, automated reactions, and habitual ways of generating answers, these were things I had never been taught, never heard from anyone, and never experienced before. Yet, as I navigated my life by applying these novel ways of thinking that I had never reached prior, I began to notice my surrounding reality shifting bit by bit. Matters that I had previously deemed impossible gradually became reality, and the path to Peru eventually materialized before my eyes. As a practical result of these conscious exercises and thought rewriting practices aimed at changing myself, I overcame various challenges that had initially seemed daunting and ultimately managed to secure a ticket to Machu Picchu. By taking action to change myself and refusing to give up, the way opened up. Cholera infection and emotional turmoil. In the cold early spring, as the departure date steadily drew closer, snow fell every now and then, as if suddenly remembering to do so. I would stop amid the falling snow, looking up at the large white crystals dancing down like confetti. Around that time, black-tailed gulls began appearing along the small river flowing past the design office where I worked, and dozens of them with widespread wings would dance wildly along the snowy riverbanks. Amidst that sight, a memory suddenly resurfaced. It was the opening scene of Out on a Limb, a television movie dramatized, written, and starred in by Shirley MacLaine, based on her own book. which had served as the catalyst for my decision to go to Peru. As she casually spoke of her experiences while walking along the beach in Malibu, California, black-tailed gulls were similarly spreading their wings and dancing wildly behind her. The moment I recalled that scene and focused on the scenery within that memory, a distinct realization welled up within me. I am setting off on a journey to Peru, just like her. As the departure date grew nearer, friends who knew about the Peru trip began telling me to cancel it. The reason was that newspapers, radio, and television were broadcasting continuous reports of murders involving Peruvian Japanese citizens, highlighting Peru's terrible security situation, alongside an unprecedented, massive cholera outbreak. The death toll was rising day by day, and Japanese citizens returning from Peru had fallen ill with cholera upon coming home. Even the doctor who administered my cholera vaccination hardly looked pleased about my traveling to Peru during this massive epidemic. During my consultation at the vaccination clinic, a wave of fear welled up and my resolve wavered. However, I repeated to myself over and over in my heart, I do not need to contract cholera in Peru. Through this cholera panic and the opposition born of my friends' concerns, I became sharply aware of just how badly I wanted to travel to Peru. I think I was able to view even such a generally dangerous situation in a positive light and replace my thoughts and awareness accordingly. Looking back now, that cholera scare unlocked the very last key tucked deep inside my inner self, the one belonging to a hesitation and anxiety I hadn't quite fully resolved. Even now, I remember my mother's reaction when I told her I was taking time off work to travel to Peru. She stated flatly and firmly, "You mustn't go anywhere like that in your physical condition." In the previous year, 1990, I had spent 3 months in the hospital battling a mysterious case of hepatitis, and even after being discharged, I had continued commuting daily to the hospital near the office for medication and IV drips. From my mother's perspective, it must have required immense courage to wave off a son recovering from illness and send him blindly off to an unfamiliar land on the opposite side of the earth. After a while, however, she said, "Once you've made up your mind, you won't listen to a word I say anyway, and if you say you're going, you'll definitely go. Do as you like." When a firm decision is forged deep within your inner self, situations arise that test and reaffirm that resolve. In other words, attracting such shaking energy serves to confirm the truth for you, the strength of your desire at the deepest level of your soul. This shaking energy arises from your inner self. Triggered by the outside world, whatever is inside you emerges as a reaction from your inner world. If you can encounter it through the people and events around you, recognize it from within yourself and transform it, it returns to you as a memory of a turn for the better. By calmly sensing those events and reactions, we can listen through our own inner depths to the desires and voices of the soul level, making a decision in the flow of life, changing that current. Letting go of a familiar world and accustomed ways of thinking with ease is no simple task. However, what matters is whether you are heading toward your destination with excitement and joy while trusting the path, or whether you are running away from fear or forcing your way through against resistance. The reality that awaits you on the other side will be entirely different depending on your stance. I believe I learned from this series of shaking energies that when you trust your own potential, handle matters accurately, and refuse to be trapped by the terrors, fears, and sorrows that crop up before you, steadily clearing various hurdles, measuring the height of your consciousness step by step, a new reality brimming with unfamiliar experiences awaits you just beyond. Creating a reality you have never experienced before is exceptionally difficult, and imagining it beforehand is impossible. Only by experiencing something and looking back along the path you have traversed can you finally understand the reality you live through. Experiences that shake your inner awareness continue to happen repeatedly throughout my life, and I'm still challenged by them frequently. They tend to occur when you decide to change direction amidst waves of major change. 2 years after the Peru trip in the spring of 1993, when I left my hometown of Fukuoka and seized an opportunity to find employment in Seattle, Washington, in the far north of the U.S. West Coast, an acquaintance who was a channeler told me with absolute confidence, "Your job hunt in Seattle is going to fail." Yet, strangely enough, the very moment I heard her words, a vivid, unmistakable realization and awareness flashed within me. The job is mine. I understood it clearly, sharply, and definitively. It is quite interesting how the dynamics of a message meant to drop your energy can instead elevate it. As a result, I passed the interview, secured the position, and employment at the Seattle design firm became a reality. What I learned from this is that events or information that initially feel negative can serve as mirrors reflecting your inner desires. If you can clearly glean some inner realization from such negative events or words, verifying it beyond the mind, it will unfailingly manifest toward that direction. Viewed from another angle, I had ultimately called forth and attracted those seemingly negative situations or words myself in order to better reflect my own inner self, making myself confirm them, or rather, my higher consciousness. Partnering with my subconscious had created that exact situation. Preparation for a spiritual journey. Before departing for Peru, a cassette tape arrived from the travel agency containing recordings on the mindset required for the trip. It was from Edward Mabe, a spiritual guide and channeler, whose role was to assist participants in experiencing inner awakenings during the journey. The tape featured messages from a formless entity called Jazua, with whom he communicated in an altered state of consciousness. The content was about preparation for the Peru trip, specifically mental readiness for embarking on a journey with a spiritual and metaphysical purpose, proceeding according to universal and inner guidance. Experiencing the energy of the places visited and discarding various expectations and fears. Their basic advice during trip preparation was, do not hold more expectations than necessary. Make your preparations busy and joyful. Looking back now, if I had continued blindly imagining various things that hadn't even happened, yet enjoying the tour with my heart swelling with excessive expectations, my experience might have transformed into something entirely different. Imagination inside your head gives birth to expectations, and the more inflated those expectations become, the higher the probability that those expectations will be betrayed. At the same time, it closes the door to potential futures of events that might actually occur. Avoiding excessive expectations or preconceptions about future events and refusing to shrink the possibilities of what lies ahead is one way to enrich the experience of a journey infused with a spiritual purpose. In fact, my trip to Egypt a year after Peru, in 1992, ended up overturning the very scenarios I had whipped up and imagined on my own. Simply because the shocking experience in Peru had created a massive illusion regarding Egypt, bloating my expectations far too much. At the time, my interest in and knowledge of Egyptian civilization were both extremely shallow, amounting to a somewhat vague notion of a mystical desert civilization that built the pyramids. Unlike Machu Picchu, which radiated an intense magnetic pull, my primary motivation was simply that many of my friends were going. When I eventually plunged into the actual ancient Egyptian ascension experiences of 2011, I realized clearly that the 1992 trip to Egypt had been far too premature for its time. Remembering that trip, even considering the timing, a great many mysterious experiences had occurred. If I ever have the opportunity to go to Egypt in the near future, an ideal journey would not be a packed, conventional tour hitting standard tourist spots, but rather a trip navigable by my own senses. A free-form journey with plenty of breathing room and high flexibility. Timing is truly delicate and exquisite. Unless the soul is prepared, it is difficult for experiences to result in spiritual breakthroughs powerful enough to flip your perspective on life. While the range of developmental milestones along one's physical age is relatively easy to imagine, the degree of a soul's growth is exceedingly difficult to measure, envision, or guess. On a spiritual journey, if you read just the bare minimum of necessary information in a guidebook, you can simply offer up prayers in your mind for guidance and walk according to universal and inner direction. That alone will manage almost everything. Spiritual journeys tend to be strongly prone to unexpected occurrences. As long as you maintain space and flexibility, there is no need to panic when the unexpected happens. I learned this from many past journeys undertaken for spiritual purposes. When seeking guidance and assistance from the unseen world, you should convey your wish clearly and without restrictions to the universe and your higher consciousness, asking them to facilitate your soul's awakening. You cast your desire out. Rather than simply waiting, things begin to move forward once you actively engage yourself. From experiential learning, I found that methods of communicating with the unseen world are successfully realized and brought into reality in most cases provided the requests do not stem from a rigid ego. Amidst the busyness of organizing my work, tour preparation flew by in a flash. Unlike a brief trip to Hawaii, this was a long-term overseas journey, and to top it off, to South America. Starting with shopping and getting bogged down by various arrangements, the days vanished. Every night before bed, I turned inward through Jazue's guided meditations, telling myself to let go of fear and expectations regarding the journey. To be honest, I think it worked to my advantage that I was simply too busy with pre-trip preparations and work schedules to have time to dwell on things slowly. I had some imagination and expectations, but as someone for whom spiritual experiences were practically non-existent, I didn't know enough for expectations or imaginations to truly apply. What happened in Peru far surpassed my expectations and imagination. There was no way I could have imagined or anticipated it beforehand. Ultimately, tour preparations were a mess, and I realized how short of time I was on the eve of departure. Due to one thing and another, I didn't crawl into bed until past 2 a.m. At that point, the travel was as good as begun. No amount of struggling or panicking now would change the fact that come the next morning, I would be leaving Japan. I was too exhausted to even think, and having no choice but to trust that things would work out somehow, I had to sleep. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archive Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute hit of real-life experiences, perfect for your daily plunge into consciousness exploration. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Share your thoughts on today's episode.